Reggie here, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. One of my goals here with this channel is to provide people with information that will allow them to make smarter decisions about the hobby. And so as part of that, what I'll be doing in this video is talking about 10 resources that every comic book collector needs at their disposal. And my hope is that this video will provide folks with some information that will be helpful as they continue through their comic book collecting journey. And it doesn't necessarily matter whether you are new to the hobby, newly returning, or a seasoned veteran. My hope is that there's something that I'll say that will be of benefit to you. Before we get to the video, I want to ask you to do me a favor by going ahead and subscribing to the channel. And if you enjoy this video, give it a like as well. With that said, let's get to the list. The very first tip that I want to offer up is to get access to a pricing service. I am a huge fan of information, especially when it comes to buying and selling comics. And it is pretty near impossible in my mind to buy and sell comics accurately if you do not have access to some type of pricing information. I am a huge fan of Go Collect. I have used this service for a number of years, but here on the channel, we also make use of data from Cover Price in various videos. I typically will go to a site like comicspriceguide.com as well if I happen to be looking up raw books. There are other free resources out there like eBay that will allow you to figure out how much something was sold for via their website if you know how to actually use it. And what I'll try to do is to link to some of those videos that go through these various resources in the description of the video. But get access to a pricing service. And what's interesting is that I will receive messages from people asking me if I can look books up for them. While I don't mind doing it, the challenge, of course, is that a lot of people will reach out asking me to do that, which means that that's a lot of requests for me. Pay the money, get access to a pricing service, or use one of the free services to figure out how much you should be spending for a comic. More importantly, figure out what your comics are worth by getting access to one, depending upon whether it is a raw book or a graded book. The second resource that every comic book collector out there needs is a place to read and store their comics. And I will tell you, I have several places here in the house where I actually read comics, including the comic book room, the sunroom, and my bedroom, because I typically read late at night digitally before I go to sleep. But storage also is a vital component of having a comic book collection. And depending upon the size of your collection, you may need more or less space. When I returned to comics at the end of 2017, the beginning of 2018, we lived in a small house and I did not have the biggest collection, but we also didn't have a whole lot of storage. So I literally had short boxes tucked into the bedrooms of each one of my children and also in the garage. And here in this house, I actually have a bay in my garage that is dedicated to a huge and healthy portion of the comic book collection. My point here is that depending upon the size of your collection, you need to have some type of storage that is adequate for you. And I know there are a lot of people that watch the channel that are in New York where space is a premium. Fingers crossed again that you can find space within your house, but it might also be necessary to have off-site storage as well. To that point of keeping your collection safe and secure, every collector should have some type of insurance on their collection. And I say this because honestly, insurance is not all that expensive, and it doesn't matter whether you have a small collection or a large collection. Insurance for your collectibles is not crazy expensive. There are videos here on the channel that will highlight why homeowners insurance potentially is not the right option. I actually go through a company called Collect Insure, which is one of the more reputable collectible insurance companies out there. It is the one that CGC and I believe CBCS also use, and I've used them for a number of years. One of the great things about Collect Insure is that they will insure your books while they are in transit to and from a buyer or seller, or if you're sending them off to a third-party grader, you can have coverage while in transit, and in many ways, that is where a lot of books actually get damaged. Get some insurance. The fourth thing that every collector needs is a supportive significant other. And if you're going to have a significant other, you want a supportive one. Trust me, especially if you have a large collection or are spending large amounts of money, you want a supportive significant other that understands your passion and your interest. Maybe even they share in it. If so, that is like a huge win-win. If not, you at least want them to tolerate your collecting. The fifth thing that every collector needs are supplies. You have to have a way, whether you have a large collection or a small collection, you have to have a way to protect your collection from the elements. So bags and boards are essential. If you decide that you want to actually display your comics, having a mechanism for displaying them either on a wall or on a shelf are essential. If you are going to have a collection, you have to have a way to store it. So boxes are also going to be important. And again, depending upon the size of your collection, you may need more or less of these things. Down in the description is actually a link to one of my partners, BCW. And if you use that link, you can actually save 10% on a lot of the different supplies that you might need. But I also want to call your attention to some other resources that are out there. One of them is a company called Gator Guard, and they produce a wonderful product that has the ability to protect your raw books from the elements, and they make really great display cases, and they come in a variety of shapes, sizes, and also colors. Clear Choice Bags and Boards is another company that I recommend. They produce some amazing clear bags and boards. So if you have wraparound variants that you want to display, this is a great product for that. And then I also have to put in a plug for my Swoldier supply boxes. This is over 2 pounds of comics and comic supplies that are sent out every single month from me to you. And it includes a host of different comic related supplies. And so you can actually sign up on regiecollects.com. The sixth thing that every comic book collector needs is a source of comics. And one of the great things is that there are a ton of trustworthy sources of comics out there. I am a huge fan of working with LCSs. If you have an LCS in your local area, I encourage you to give them your support. I encourage you to develop a relationship with your LCS owner because they are a great resource for you. But if you don't have an LCS, or if you don't have a good one, mycomicshop.com is a great resource as well. They actually offer some healthy discounts if you decide to set up a pull list that will save you some money. But in addition to that, there are a ton of amazing virtual dealers out there that I can recommend as well. And I actually highlighted a lot of these dealers in the Guide to Smart Comic Collecting. And I'll put a link in the description of this video to some of those resources. The seventh resource that every collector needs is a mechanism for cataloging your collection. And depending upon your personality, there are a range of ways that you can actually do this. Using a backing board and a pen is on one end of the spectrum. You could use an Excel spreadsheet or some other type of database to catalog things. There are also various apps that are out there. One of them is called CLZ, which is a wonderful app that a lot of people use, and I've done a review of that app here on the channel, so you may want to check that out. The other thing that I can recommend is that some of the pricing services give you the ability to catalog your collection as well. ComicsPriceGuide.com actually has an app that will allow you to catalog your collection. I also use, as I mentioned before, Go Collect, and they have an ability to catalog a slab collection, because Go Collect is only for slabs and not for raw comics, but they have an ability to create a report or an inventory of your comics that will track those comics values over time. And so again, there are a range of resources that are out there that are at your disposal. Decide what works best for you. The eighth thing that every comic book collector needs is a buddy to bounce ideas off of. I can tell you that in your own vacuum, a lot of things will sound like a good idea, but oftentimes it helps for you to verbalize those things out loud to somebody else and then to have them play that back to you. Sometimes in that process, you realize that your idea of trading this book for that book doesn't quite make sense, or your approach to acquiring a book might not also make sense. So I would encourage you to find a trustworthy buddy that you can bounce ideas off of. And what may also happen is that your buddy might become a trading partner or a hunting partner. So that is never a bad thing. Every comic book collector out there should have separate accounts. Separate accounts for the buying and selling of comics. As I've mentioned in previous videos, the IRS requires us to report any income that we make. And so if we are buying and selling comics and making a profit, we should be tracking those expenses. And one great way to track those expenses is to have a separate account that makes it a little bit easier, because you're separating hobby funds from family funds. And I can also tell you that this goes a long way to having a significant other that is supportive by demonstrating to them that you are not using family funds to buy your latest comic. That goes a long way. So I definitely want to encourage you to do that. The last and final tip that I'll offer up is around research resources. Earlier in the video, I made mention of pricing services, and those are wonderful sources of information that tell us a lot about what is happening in the world of comics and collectibles. But in addition to pricing services, there are some other resources that you may need to have at your disposal, depending upon the type of collector that you are. One of those things is Chronicon. This is a free resource that is available online that will provide you with all types of information on how many copies of a particular comic sold in a given month in a given year. This is fantastic information to have at your disposal. Another that I'll make mention of is Key Collector app. This is a wonderful app. Trust me when I tell you, I literally use it every single day. And if you have not downloaded Key Collector app, I encourage you to do so. One of the great things about this app is that it provides you with the information on the significance of a comic. So if you are out there hunting for comics, or you're going through comics in your collection and you cannot recall what makes one book significant versus another, Key Collector app can actually provide you with that information. In addition to the ones that I've already mentioned, I will throw in there the Overstreet Guide. This is a great resource that is printed annually, that has amazing articles and information in it. And if you can get your hands on a copy of the Overstreet, I definitely encourage you to check it out. The same can be said with my guide, which came out last year, the Guide to Smart Comic Book Collecting. This is a great resource that we put out there last year for people to access to help make them smarter about the hobby of comic book collecting. With that said, these are essentially my 10 things that I think every comic book collector needs at their disposal. There may be some others that I've missed, and if you think that I missed something, I definitely want to encourage you to leave those thoughts behind down in the comment section. If you enjoyed this video, I definitely want to encourage you to give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do that now. Tap that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and that way you won't miss out on any of the content that comes out from the channel. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects. Take care.